Hello everybody, and welcome back to Elite Outcome Academy. I think we're at episode 9 this evening. And in the spirit of this challenge that I have going on between my YouTube shorts and TikTok, we're going to talk about overall human behavior in this episode. Now, I'm going to rein myself in because if I'm just generically talking about human behavior, I could go on for on and on and on and on and on. We're going to keep this episode still between the 15, 20, maybe 30-minute time frame that has been pretty consistent so far. So, human behavior. I said in both my short and my TikTok that I have like this David Attenborough like narration going on in my head when I'm observing people. Like sometimes I feel like I'm an alien. Like we are like aliens to other animals. And we are assuming and predicting and measuring and collecting data on penguins and giraffes and so forth. I feel that way about humans. I'm absolutely fascinated with us. The tangible things that make up our body, like our hands and what we can do to manipulate the world with them, our consciousness that allows us to think and process and be so super creative as well as catastrophize. I love the study of neurology and the way that the neurological systems in our brain work, as well as the peripheral nervous system from the brain that runs through our bodies. I am absolutely fascinated with our obsession with the metaphysical. All the way from spirituality to science. I count science in the metaphysical because we are trying to understand a whole bunch of stuff with data that we observe. Though the spirituality and religious side of things, when compared against science, only has evidence based on individual experience basis, where of course science is science and we can have observable data. But nonetheless, I love that we try to be so intentional about our purpose in this world. And I love to combine all of that together and think about it as a whole because I believe that we have purpose. I believe that we have God-given gifts, talents, and characteristics and behaviors, as well as developments that happen through experience that shape who we are. I love to look at the individual and try to figure out what makes them work and do it through my own experience of observation and what I feel and what I acknowledge and what I perceive. I love watching the macro, sociological things. The micro and macro sociological behaviors. Micro being like the family unit and macro being the overall population. I like to look at it culturally as well. Why do some cultures function with certain behaviors and thrive in certain ways more so than others that crave it? Can we cross-examine and inject and download and cultivate different mechanisms from different cultures without calling it appropriation, but with looking at it as human behavior that exists collectively? This is absolutely fascinating to me. I am so in love with it. Little backstory. I've got two main reasons for my obsession with observing human behavior. One of them stems from a consequence, a result of the way that I was raised, being that in a lot of chaos. And when we are raised in chaos, our survival mechanisms really kick in and make us observe the world around us to try to avert threat so that we can survive. We try to divert and maneuver and weave through life in order to attempt to stay alive. And we do that through conscious observation as well as subconscious wiring and mechanisms that motivate us towards successfully staying alive, which underlying is so that we can procreate and continue on the process and progress of our species, just like any other animal does. Another reason is so inherently I have this ability to be observative over people, and by shifting my presence in my observation, by shifting the way that I perceive human behavior, instead of analyzing it as a safety mechanism, but analyzing it as curiosity, has allowed me to take this gift given to me by chaos and really move forward with it. The second reason I am obsessed with human behavior was because of something that my uncle did when I was 12 years old. I got to spend a couple of weeks with my uncle, and my dad's and his siblings are much older. Today, my dad is 83 years old, and he is the youngest of the three. My uncle died several years ago, but so we go back 25 years, and he was in his mid to late 60s at that time, and he spent 2 weeks with me. I spent 2 weeks with him, but he spent 2 weeks with me, going around the Seattle area, pointing out human behavior and challenging me to collect data in experience, my own experience as well as observing others. And I didn't realize that he had even done this intentionally, near hypnotically, until I was in my early 20s. And one day I had this thought: how am I so good at understanding human behavior, predicting little nuances and micro expressions and macro behaviors as to what the result is going to be? If I can see that this person's behaving this way, which is influencing that person to behave in one way, in an hour's time, we're going to have total meltdown and collapse of our micro sociological unit. Or in the reverse, somebody's behaving with a great mindset today, and this is relating back to my life's story from the ages of 0 to about 23, and the chaos that ensued in different forms throughout that time. And something, when I was about 20, 21, 22, triggered the thought, triggered the curiosity as to why I understood human behavior so much. And I concluded that it was due to my uncle training my mind for 2 weeks on understanding body language. One, I didn't conclude to the first factor of it, which is having to be hyper vigilant and observative in keeping myself safe in a chaotic world, until several years later when I was actually beginning to take psychology classes. And then I really didn't understand my ability to analyze and predict human behavior until I went down an entrepreneurial journey, which led me into personal development and self-help and mindset trainings. And And then it wasn't until just about 3 years ago. Today I'm 37. Little over 3 years ago, just before my 34th birthday, I had an event happen that I could not have predicted. See, we can't always know what's going to happen. We can talk about intuition when we talk about the metaphysical things. I believe we are very intuitive if we pay attention and train that part of us. I knew for several years that something was coming down the line that was going to steer me in the direction that I knew my purpose was trying to pull me in, but I couldn't have predicted what this event could have been. Nonetheless, as strong of a message as I could have possibly received from the universe, from God, from forces outside of me, I sat back and I took all of my skill, I took all of my talent, all of my analytics and observations, and I turned them onto myself. And I discovered that I thought I was self-aware. What I realized was I was self-analyzing. I didn't really become self-aware until I started going down this process of trying to find a way to help end suffering of traumatic events, to end self-sabotaging behavior in those that never had the guidance to self-regulate, which is what the Academy is about. But nonetheless, I absolutely love trying to diagnose and filter through and figure out the different bits of data that make us operate the way that we do. And there's so much wonderful information out there that supplements my philosophies and my hypotheses. And speaking of philosophy, since we're on the long form video here, we can do some philosophizing. I don't do it on the short form stuff, not much. On the short form stuff, I'm much more focused on educating than I am the wisdom side of things. So philosophizing that we are meant to have special gifts, talents, characteristics, and behaviors that lead us towards successfully achieving certain tasks that are to the benefit of our tribe. And we inherently have certain interests that catch our eye. And previous to modern day times, that could have been the expression for hunting or the observation for gathering food, or the ability to be able to create, to be creative in architecture, to keep each other warm. And collectively we had these skills, and one family, we have a lot of last names today that stem from this idea. As we moved into modern times, we've got the Thatchers and the Shoemakers and so forth. And they relate directly back to specific job titles that certain families had. And we can see that there was an inherited amount of information that passed from one generation to the next. And today we've, for the most part, lost that. But I have an idea, I hypothesize that we can fix it. Because when we understand human behavior and we accept the fact that we have pre-designed programs, that run in operation to our ability to have free will and decision-making consciousness. We can take a deep breath away from the absurdity that exists in our minds of the superiority complex that so many of us have. Yes, we have a purpose, and that purpose perhaps is designed in some form of destiny. And I think there's enough of us that create fiction stories and as well as nonfiction research and so forth, and philosophy and hypothesis, theory, that there's something to that. And I've got my own beliefs on that I tend to keep private up to this point. I won't forever. I'll divulge eventually. But it is incorporated into who we are. So watching people be people. Why people are people. Who people are people. The when, what, whys, hows, when, all of the things are absolutely fascinating to me. As a child, I was absolutely fascinated by animal documentaries and observations. Today, I still enjoy them, though I spend most of my time studying human. Anyhow, like I said, I could talk about this forever. And those of you that are interested in this journey, follow along. Subscribe to the channel, because we go down a lot of paths when we're talking about the human experience. And though here with the Academy, I have a big focus on helping people heal and recover from the absolute chaos that some of us experience, I've developed the curriculum based on understanding human behavior, based on my perception of human behavior, based on what I have observed in myself and my own recovery journey, and what works and what doesn't. Because we are complex creatures. We don't have the ability to be independent. Not in the way that most people think that they are. Very, very, very few people have gone and lived a successful, isolated life. And even though they may get to old age, I still would not call that success. They would, but I wouldn't. Even so, somebody that goes off and lives in isolation cannot do so without receiving information previous to making that decision. We need data on how to use tools. We need data on how to acquire food. We need data on where to find water. And some of those things could be figured out if one was left completely to their own devices. Still, that couldn't be possible without first going through the nature nurture process of infancy. We as human beings cannot live without other human beings getting us through infancy first. A baby has no means to operate in this world independently. None. They would die. But we're going to do bits and series of human behavior. I'm going to focus more on academic type stuff here on the channel, but since I started this competition between YouTube and TikTok today, I thought I'd just make episode 9 about my love for human behavior. We'll touch back on it at certain points, but that ends this episode. So, become elite, and find somebody to be kind to today.